To start with, do you think the Alberta government, the consecutive Alberta government, should take some responsibility for the situation we're in now by not failing to plan properly to the population growth, especially after the call from all over Canada for other Canadians to come to Alberta, land of opportunities and dreams, and we don't have any infrastructure. We spend a lot of money advertising, come to Alberta, come to Alberta. And obviously, the federal government is just pouring in immigrant and international students, and we're in this situation. So I think, do you agree that somebody should take a little bit of responsibility for the situation we're in now? And actually, I think you answered my second question, which is what is the time frame before we see some reductions in the classroom sizes, and what's the end game? Like, what is the end game in your plan to see number of students in the classroom, especially in, as you said, in Calgary, Edmonton, Red Deer, which is really very important as well. Lastly, my question would be about, especially for ethnic learning, I mean, Arabic or Greek or Hindu or Philippines or all that stuff. What is the chance? Is there any funding to support weekend classes? You know how ethnic community, they rally so much on a weekend, Saturday, Sundays, schools. Is there any government funding program to non-NGO or any local organization to help those community to just learn their culture and their background? And I think that will help so much the minority community, I should say.
Yeah, it sure will. And thank you for the questions. If I miss one, just jump in. On the last, I'll go backwards. On the last one, I can't recall offhand if we do provide any funding to support language development or language classes. I believe we do, but I would want to just double check. But you're right; they are so important. Like these ones that are on Saturday mornings or on the weekends. Like those are the exact type of classes I went to every Saturday morning in the basement of our church to learn Greek language. And I know so many other communities continue to do that work. Again, I do believe that we do provide some funding to language associations to help in delivering those programs, and always happy to look at ways in which we can further support them. On the question of what's the ideal end game, what's the ideal state after we build all of these schools, we don't have any kind of target classroom level, but we do have a target as it relates to utilization rate, which is very similar to classroom rate. The guidelines that we use are about 85% is a standard and acceptable range for school utilization, and we have schools right now that are over 100%. So there's a lot of work that needs to happen to be able to bring those averages down. But that 85% is the one that we typically shoot for. In terms of responsibility and ownership for these challenges, I would love to be able to say that the Alberta Calling campaign was a massive success and brought hundreds of thousands of people to the province. But unfortunately, it's just not the case. The Alberta's Calling campaign was mainly targeting people in other provinces, mainly Toronto, Vancouver, where there was a high cost of living. If you look at our population growth and our population increase over the last 2 years, it hasn't been from people coming from other provinces. It's been arrival of immigrant communities and arrival of new Canadians. That has been the single biggest factor that has caused our population to grow so quickly. Of course, the provincial government does not control immigration. I do know there has been some criticism of the federal government for their handling of immigration over these past 2 years, not just from Alberta, but from other provinces as well, because they're also seeing these similar challenges. And we have to remember, we went from a situation in COVID, we had negative enrollment So we had no enrollment growth. And then coming out of COVID, we again had, I think we had 1 or 2% enrollment growth. And then it went to about 5% enrollment growth. As an example, the Calgary Board of Education, their entire district-wide utilization rate went from 85% in 2022-23, 85%, which is a acceptable range, as I mentioned earlier, to 92% the next year. So it's been very sudden. It's been very quick. I know that some critics have suggested, well, this is the government's fault. You didn't plan properly. I don't believe that to be true. No one can predict your population and your enrollment is going to go from 2% to then 4.5% and then 5% in 1 year. And again, I would really like to take credit for the success of the Alberta is Calling campaign, but the growth that we're seeing is from new immigrants and new Canadians. And of course, that's something that's entirely the responsibility of the federal government.
Thanks, Minister. I do believe the Alberta calling played a big role. Yes, maybe from other provinces, but was one of the big reason for immigrant to choose Alberta because of this call as well as an opportunity to come and work. So the way the Alberta government advertised for it, it played a role for for new immigrant to choose Alberta as their future home because Alberta is calling.
Yeah, and we have we have lower taxes than other provinces. Yeah. We have higher earnings. It's such a great place to be and live. So yeah, I'm sure sure it plays a role, but I don't think the single largest factor. But we're working as quickly as we can to help build new schools. And I think it's encouraging though to see so many people choose Alberta and want to come to our province. It's a sign of strength, it's a sign of growth, and I think a sign of success as well.
Okay, thanks, Minister.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Sam. We're now going to go to Sunil, right? We're now going to start with Sam. So Sam, could you please go ahead?
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. Minister, regarding the safety of the class in the schools and around the schools, I'm not really sure what is the role of the your ministry or Minister of Education Ministry about the safety of the schools in general. Let me tell you what I hear from a lot of parents is we send our kids to schools. Unfortunately, they learn a lot of stuff that instead of learning math and science and stuff or literature, they're learning how to vape and learning how to do all kind of stuff. So in a way, they feel like the environment inside the schools and around the schools is not the best. I don't want to say it's not safe. It is safe, but it's not the safest ever. Yeah. The question is, what's the role of your department in this? And is there anything you think your government could do to improve the school environment to make it more safe / better, especially the vaping issue, the gangs issues, the drugs activities, and all this stuff? All what I hear is just a lot of parents concerned about school being not a safe place for their kids.
Yeah, and an important question when it comes to drugs, gangs, or criminal activity. The Ministry of Education would be involved very little because that would be the primary responsibility of the local police services, in the community. But there is an area where we do have responsibility that is, I think, somewhat connected, which is making sure that time at school is spent at school. Time at school is spent learning and studying. So for example, as I'm sure you know, very recently, we banned cell phones from classrooms. Why? Because we want to make sure that a student's time spent in the classroom is spent learning, not spent on a phone. there have been questions and comments that I've received about vaping. And that may be something that we need to look at further. And there's also the bigger question. It's somewhat related, but not directly related to safety, but it's also the question of politics and ideology in the classroom.
Yeah.
And are we making sure that the time at school is spent free of distractions as best as possible, and students are spending the time learning in an objective and impartial way and receiving information in that way? So on those aspects, we have the ability to make changes, but when it comes to criminal activity, of course, I would have to defer to the local police services for their role.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.